Hello, BioFam. It is Mr. Hajarian,
And Ms. Detmer.
and we are here to talk to you about email etiquette. This is your first video lecture, so please make sure you have your video lecture skeleton notes out and take down notes as you're going through this. All right, let's get started.
All right, so here are a few pointers. Every email should have an appropriate email address. So you want your email address to be professional and not include embarrassing or distracting words in it, like 1234bunnies at AOL.com is not a good example. You want it to be something that you're fine with sharing with a college counselor or a potential employer. Your email should have an appropriate subject line. So hey in all caps with exclamation point, or bio stuff are not example of good subject lines. Instead, your subject line should be a brief description of what your email is about. So something like a request for a parent meeting or absence from class are good examples of subject lines. Be polite and to the point. It's important to remember that the person you're sending an email to is probably very busy, and to respect their time by being succinct or using fewer words. And please read through your emails and double check them for spelling or grammar errors. You can't undo an email that you've sent, so you want to make sure you're not sending something that's embarrassing or spelled incorrectly.
Okay, so let's take a look at the normal curve of email response time. So when you send an email, obviously we all expect or would like to have a response right away, but we know that's not the reality of things. So generally speaking, and later on we'll talk about a little more specifics of this, but you want to give that person at least 24 hours to respond to you before asking them if they've received your email or before sending a second email.
So an email should have an introduction, and you should include something polite. You could mention the person's name, which you should spell correctly, and you can say something like, I hope you're having a good day. Just put that other person first. Think about them. Think about how you would be polite to them and show respect. Please don't say things like, yo, what's up? Those are not appropriate. You can address someone with a hi or a hello. A dear is fine too. You want to include a body paragraph, and that regardless of how large or small it is. And you can leave a space from your intro just so that it has a clean look. And then also an ending to your email, such as I really appreciate your consideration, or I'm looking forward to your response. And this just leaves a positive remark and also shows respect towards the person that you're sending an email to.
Absolutely. Okay, so some things to avoid. Overall, you want to avoid using slang or abbreviating things that aren't professional. Second bullet point, replying all. It could be an embarrassing thing and it's something you want to avoid. So if your intention is to only respond to the person who sent you the email, be careful about hitting reply/reply all. Sometimes it makes more sense to talk to that person in person instead of sending an email. Think about that before you send an email. Is this something you'd rather talk about in person? Also, keep in mind, like we said before, once you send an email, it's done, right? It's just kind of there forever. So think about whether the email needs to be sent. Using all caps, not a good idea. It makes it seem like you're angry or you're shouting. It sort of relates to our last bullet point here, speaking in an angry or demanding tone, and you want to avoid that, especially if you're writing an email to a teacher or a professional of some sort. And last but not least, not using any caps. You want to make sure you use proper spelling and grammar and check it before you send it.
Okay, so now let's analyze an email. So looking through this email, what might we change about it? Well, first of all, it's written in all caps, which sounds like you're yelling. They're shouting, and that is not professional. So again, capitalize only the appropriate letters. Also, this email was not spell checked, and there's misspelled words. Also, there's informalities like you. So you want to make sure that you write out the proper words and don't include smiley faces. That's not professional either.
What about that email address they sent it from?
Yeah.
Hot stuff?
That's, no.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. And one more thing I would say that if you're going to attach something, just make sure it really is attached and don't worry about it and say, hope you get it. You shouldn't have to worry that they get it. Just make sure, double check that you attached it, and that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Always double check if you attached it. Okay, let's look at another one. So obviously we've taken some things out of here. So like the last one, go ahead and take a moment, pause the video if you need to, and read the email, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so in the beginning it says this is the same student who didn't back his crap up. Is that professional language? No, that should not be in this email. So as you read through this, a few things that I've noticed is just the language that's used in there, not okay, not appropriate. And if you keep reading, you'll see the one that says I stayed up all night, and it's just not the way to go. They're giving a lot of information that's really unnecessary. I think that they could have said something in this email about what had happened just very briefly and then had a conversation in person. So we wanted to let you know this because throughout the school year, you may have some struggles and you may need to tell teachers what's going on with you and maybe why you need an extension on something. And that's okay, but it's really important the way that you word it, and this email is not a good way to word it.
All right, let's look at one more email. So I like how this email starts with dear. It addresses the doctor with dear, which is polite, and it is really to the point. So it gives the student's name and it addresses who they are and also the class that the student is in. And what I love about that is that the doctor, who is probably very busy, can easily identify who this student is. I guess it's a professor actually. So I think that's great. It's to the point. And I also like how this email mentions exactly what the student is looking for. I am interested in working on research with you. So it's very clear, and that is also a way to show that you respect that recipient's time. And the closure is positive and grateful. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And one thing I also want to point out about this email is that the student asks for something, and they ask politely. And if there's something that you want, that's a great way to do it, is to just politely ask. Don't assume something. So would it be possible to meet with you? That's a great way to word something.
Absolutely. I really like that. I look forward to hearing from you, because to me that's a way of saying, like, I need you to respond to me, but it's a really polite way of saying that, basically. So kudos to this person. All right, so let's finish this up. So some more pointers. We talked about it earlier, but when it comes to the time that you allow that person to respond to you, allow 24 to 48 hours for them to respond to you. What you don't want is go up to them, let's say you email a teacher on a Thursday night and you see them first thing Friday morning and you're like, hey, did you get that email I sent you? That is a no-no. Don't do that. Give them that time to respond to you. Don't ask them prior to that time if they got your email, because a lot of times what happens is I'll have responded to a student when they say, hey, did you get my email? And then my response will be, yeah, but did you get mine? Right? So check your email too before you ask that question, if you were going to ask that question. Now, let's say 48 hours have passed. What do you do at that point? Well, you can politely ask in person, or you can send another polite email asking if they've had a chance to read your previous email. Lastly, for letters of rec, please make sure you only send an email after you've asked the teacher in person if they can write you a rec letter. You don't want to ask a teacher through email for a rec letter. All right. Hope this has been helpful. Excited to see you in class.